let's get into it. We are talking about TikTok. TikTok getting banned. Why is it getting banned? Now, as far as I know, from what I've learned, it's because it's a Chinese company and it has to do the bidding of the Communist Chinese Party, and that's why it's getting banned. But there's a whole bunch of other theories out there. Now, we're going to be playing Joe Rogan talking with a social media expert. He's going to be talking about the reasons it's getting banned from his perspective. Then we're going to have Tucker Carlson sitting down with a senator, and they're going to be talking about why they think it's getting banned and the flaws in the Biden administration. And they also say that TikTok's not Chinese, and I'm going to be debunking that. I'm going to be honest with you. I love Tucker Carlson, but I'm going to be debunking what he's saying because it's just flat out not true. Then we're going to be playing a video about how business actually works in China. I'm going to show you an article that actually kind of proves that TikTok is Chinese. Then we're going to be playing some clips from a gentleman named Cancel This. His name's Ian, but you can find him as Cancel This on Twitter and TikTok. And he's talking about his theory in regards to Israel. So it's like some people are saying it's China, but then it's not China and it's actually Israel. Some people are saying it's not Israel. There's a whole bunch of theories and I can't really pinpoint it, but I know what I know in regards to TikTok being Chinese. So let's just get into it. It's very interesting stuff. Don't forget about IamCoachColin.com. We got all sorts of soul not for sale stuff, cancel Hollywood stuff, stop worshiping celebrities, Public Enemy #1. Discount code is IamCoachColin, all capital letters, all one word, one L in the name Colin. Let's start this clip.
What specifically about TikTok?
So this is something I'm just really beginning to learn. I don't even have much on it in the book. So kids love stories, and the stories are great all around the world. People tell children stories. There are myths. We see plays, we see television shows, and so I asked my undergrads at NYU. I said, "How many of you use Netflix?" Almost everybody says yes. How many of you wish Netflix was never invented? Nobody. Watching stories is not a bad thing. TikTok is not stories. It's little tiny bits of something. And they're short. They don't add up to anything. They're incoherent. They're often disturbing and disgusting. I mean, people being hit by cars, people being punched in the face, and it's much more addictive and with no nutritive value. They're not really stories, and so it seems to be much more addictive. Kids really get hooked on it, much more so than Netflix or anything else. And it depends on what you're watching, but I suspect that so many of them are consuming stuff about mental illness. It has a variety of effects that we don't even understand yet.
Now, I know that there's some push right now currently to ban TikTok. And there's a lot of people that are very torn on this because they don't want to give the government the ability to ban social media. Mm-hmm. What is the argument about banning TikTok? Mm-hmm. What specifically are they talking about?
The main thing they want to do is separate them from the company, ByteDance that owns them, and just make them an American company.
Yeah.
They can still operate, I suppose.
So it's a data issue?
Well, it's a national security issue. So, right. So thank you. Let's separate the national security issue from the mental health issue.
Okay.
I have a lot of libertarian friends. I have a lot of libertarian sympathies. I would be uncomfortable about the government banning a company or a product because it's harmful to children. I personally think we should just have age verification. We should not have kids on certain things. But if it was just a question of, this is really bad for children, let's ban it. No, I don't think I would support that. But TikTok is different because it is a Chinese-owned company. And as many of your listeners will know, China, it says in whatever, it doesn't have a constitution, I don't think. But by law, every Chinese company must do what the Chinese Communist Party tells it to do. And that's what's so scary. That this is Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. They might have similar effects to TikTok, but the Chinese government can literally tell ByteDance to change what kids are seeing, and they do that in China. They tell them in China you have to have this kind of content and not that kind of content. There was an incredible episode you had Tristan Harris on. Tristan Harris has this amazing podcast episode where they go into the national security risks, and they show that the day that Russia invaded Ukraine, TikTok in Russia changed radically. The government was on, TikTok was on it. Yep, we're going to do what Putin wants us to do, So the idea that the most influential platform on American children, the idea that must do what the Communist Party tells it to do, at a time when we have mounting tension with China and the possibility of a war. I mean, as Tristan says, imagine if in the 1960s the Soviet Union owned and controlled, PBS, ABC, NBC, and all the kids programs. we would never have allowed that. So I hope listeners, I really strongly support this bill. I think Representative Mike Gallagher, was one of the ones proposing it, or at least certainly advocating for this issue. I hope people will not see it as a TikTok ban, but they'll see it as an urgent national security move to force ByteDance to sell to a non-Chinese owner.
And specifically, what are they pointing to when they say national security risk? What specifically have they seen?
Mm-hmm. So a lot of it seems to have to do with the data question. Facebook pioneered this model in which the person using the product is not really the customer. They don't pay the money. They're the product. The user is the product, not the customer. And they give them data, and the data can be used for all sorts of purposes, especially marketing and advertising. And so TikTok has enormous amounts of data, and they can get all psychological on it because they know exactly how long you hesitated, how much you like certain kinds of videos. Many people have written articles on how TikTok seems to have known they were gay before they did, that sort of thing. So TikTok has extraordinary amounts of data on most Americans, certainly most young Americans. And they say, oh, but we don't share. Like, it's in a server over here in Singapore, I don't know where, but it's it's not in China. Oh, come on. There's no way it could possibly be the case that the data is really separated and not available to the Chinese Communist Party.
And what are they pointing to in terms of the danger of this data that makes them want to have it sold to an American company?
I don't know whether the motivation behind the bill. I don't know whether it's that the Chinese would have some access to data on American citizens, or whether what most alarmed me when I heard the Tristan Harris podcast was the ease of influencing American kids to be pro this or pro that on any political issue.
Right, you're seeing that with Palestine and Gaza.
Yeah, I think so.
You're definitely seeing that now. It's very obvious. Well, it's very obvious with many things with TikTok, trans stuff, and there's a lot of different things that they're encouraging, and people that are opposed to that are being banned, which is also very odd. And specifically, like female athletes, we had Riley Gaines, who was the female athlete that competed against Leah Thomas, and she has said that biologically male athletes should not be able to compete with biologically female athletes because they have a significant advantage. And she was banned from TikTok just for saying that.
Yeah, that's right. So this relates to the larger issue that we talked about last time and that I hope we'll continue to talk about today, which is that social media has brought us into an environment in which anyone has the ability to really harm anyone else. There's an extraordinary amount of intimidation available via social media. And so this has led the leaders of all kinds of organizations to run scared. Greg Lukianoff and I saw this in universities. Why don't the university presidents stand up to the protesters who are shouting down visiting speakers? Isn't there a grown-up in the room? And then we saw it in journalism, newspapers and editors who wouldn't stand up for journalistic principles. And so I think what has happened here is that social media allows whoever is angriest and can mobilize the most force to threaten, to harass, to surround, to mob anyone. And when people are afraid to say something, that's when you get the crazy distortions that we saw on campus, or that Riley Gaines was seeing too. Just that people are afraid to speak up. And in a democracy, in a large, secular, diverse democracy, we have to be able to talk about things.
Yeah.
And so that's part of why we're in such a mess now. Is I've argued that it's when social media became super viral after 2009, 2010. You get the like button, the retweet button. Social media wasn't really bad or harmful before. It wasn't terribly harmful before then. But by 2012, 2013, it had really become as though everyone had a dart gun. Everybody could shoot everyone. And that's when we began sort of like teaching on eggshells in universities, because our students could really do a lot of damage if we said one word they didn't like.
And it's not just the students, which is really disturbing. We've talked about this before. There was an FBI security specialist who estimated that somewhere in the neighborhood of 80% of the Twitter accounts were bots.
Yeah.
Which is very strange, because that means that they're mobilizing specifically to try to push different narratives.
Yeah, that's right. So if you think of, people say, well, now Twitter is the public square or things like that. It's not a public square. It's more like the Roman Colosseum. It's more like, a place where people say things and the fans are in the stands are hoping to see blood. To move our discussions onto platforms like that can be manipulated, that anyone, doesn't have to be a foreign intelligence service. It could be anybody who wants to influence anything in this country or anywhere in the world. They can, for very little money, they can hire someone to create thousands, millions of bots. And so we're living in this sort of funhouse world where everything is weird mirrors, and it's very hard to figure out what the hell is going on.
Have you ever sat down and tried to figure out a solution to this other than trying to encourage people not to use? Jimmy, did something happen to the volume just drop lower? Okay, so what was I just saying? We're talking about solutions
Yes.
other than asking kids to not use it, which is very hard to do.
Yeah, that's right. So when we're talking about the democracy problems and the manipulation of politics or anything else, those are really, really hard. I have a few ideas of what would help, and we're not going to do them because all of them are like the left likes and the right doesn't, or vice versa.
Like, what are those ideas, though?
Things like like identity authentication. If large platforms had something like know your customer laws, that is, if you want to open an account on Facebook or on X, you have to at least prove that you're a person. And
Nope. If you ever had to deal with know your customer, if you're in the crypto realm, you probably know this very well. You have to have a picture of your ID. I think a picture of your passport. It has to be next to your face. Nope. I don't want to see that. So he's right. We're not going to do those things. Although Twitter does have that as an option if you want to verify yourself. Just saying. It may become a mandatory thing. I don't know. But in that whole conversation, Joe even brought up the Israel-Palestine stuff. That's very interesting because that was an aspect of this whole thing that never occurred to me. And, I'll break down why as we go on. But I'm going to move on to Tucker Carlson. Now, TikTok not being stories at all, I know that's not true, right? It's funny because this gentleman's saying one thing. You're going to hear another journalist that I have a clip of saying something the complete opposite of this, and both are ridiculous statements. To say TikTok is not stories at all, that's not true. I've actually seen engaging stories. Some of them are just about like Atlantis and, what you could deem nonsensical stuff, but there is a way of telling stories on TikTok. That is a thing you can do, and people do it really well. To say there's no value, there is a majority of TikTok that has no value, especially if you're just sitting on there, you're just letting your brain melt. There's really no value. He's right about that. But there are some things. There are some people, just like every platform, there are some people who are actually bringing real value, where you're actually learning some stuff, you're finding out things you didn't know. There's a bunch of those things, and TikTok's no different. So for him to say it's often disgusting, that's what this gentleman said. I don't know that to be true. I would say it's often sexual. That's what I would say, looking at TikTok. There's a lot of dance trends, twerking trends, things of that nature, like wild stuff like that. And then also when it comes to the whole LGBTQ movement, there's a lot of people talking about different things that are linked to sexuality and preference. So I would say it's like in that realm a lot of the time. But again, there's wild stuff you can see on every single platform if you're looking for it. Interesting thing they said, you're the product. That's something I didn't realize until like a couple of years ago. That term, you're the product, because you don't pay any money, right? So it's actually you and what you're clicking on and how long you stay there. And that actually makes you the product. And I wish we all knew this as all this stuff was rolling out, because we all could have banded together and been like, hey, you got to pay me $500 a month to be on your platform. Because that's actually, every social media platform does that for us. They don't lose money. They lose money in terms of having to pay us all of a sudden, but they still make a profit. A massive profit, paying all of us. It's true. Maybe not 500, maybe more. I don't know. But we could have pulled that off if we knew. I say the next platform that comes out, if everybody could band together, that would be the best thing. To be like, you don't get our data. You have to pay us because we're going to be on your app. You're going to find out a lot of things about how the human mind works and their spending habits and buying habits. You have to pay us for that. That would be great if we did that. And then lastly, do you want US to gain this data or do you want China to gain it? Because it seems like they're trying to force it to become a US company. I don't know. What's better? I think what would be better is to re-engineer the whole thing and take away all the spyware. That's just my thinking. Now we're going to hear Tucker Carlson. He's going to be talking about this stuff. They're saying some things that are just outright not true. I don't know where this is coming from, but I don't know. I have a little bit of proof of it, but you let me know what you think. Let's play this first clip.
Joe Biden, who is suddenly claiming that TikTok is bad because it's too Chinese and it's pouring filth into the minds of our children. Now, he can't be sincere about that, obviously, so why would they be joining him in this? Do you have any idea?
You know, my concern has always been with the centralization of power, with giving up power. I don't care whether it's a Republican or a Democrat president.
Amen.
I don't want any president to have the power to ban apps that are sold on an app store. And that's essentially what this is going to happen. 180 million Americans put dance videos up and whatever else is on TikTok, and they choose the terms of those servers the same way people on Facebook do. And does Facebook scrape your data? Sure. Does Google scrape your data? Do all of these giant tech companies scrape your data? They all take your data. But the thing is there are now accusations. They say, oh, TikTok's owned by the Chinese government. The Chinese communists own it. Well, that's not even true. You can't say stuff just over and over again that's not true. TikTok is owned by about 60% of it's owned by international investors from all over the world. 20% is owned by the two Chinese software engineers that created the app. And 20% is owned by the employees of TikTok, which 7,000 of them are Americans. So there's a significant nexus of Americans in the ownership. And then there's a significant nexus of Americans using this. And they say, oh, well, the Chinese government owns it. It's just frankly not true. Now, the company that owns TikTok also owns something like TikTok that is censored, and the Chinese let that be broadcast throughout China. The Chinese government does have a member of the board. It's called Douyin. It's the Chinese TikTok. But they don't have a member of the board of ByteDance. They don't control ByteDance. And the data is now kept in Oracle Cloud, centered in Texas. And this has been done because the company wants to try to exist. It's a very popular app. It has a great deal of value. So they're doing anything they can to comply. And yet the hysterics in the House are just, shut them down, communism this, communism that. Look, I've written 2 books about Chinese communism and what it does both during the COVID leak and also what it did during Mao's reign. So I am no fan of Chinese communism, but at the same time, we can't sort of emulate the Chinese to try to protect our way of life, becoming like the Chinese and banning things. TikTok is banned in China. They don't have TikTok. They have a censored version in China that the Chinese government does control, but they don't control TikTok over here. If we ban TikTok, we're simply becoming and acting like the Chinese. So there is a hysteria afoot, but in America, there are things that protect. You can't just take people's stuff in America. If you have a company, I can't come take Tucker Carlson Network just from you because one of your investors is from China. I have to go to court. I have to prove that somehow you're a Chinese communist and that you're giving data to them. These are all allegations. They may or may not be true, but you can't take someone's company worth billions of dollars without proving it in a court of law. Likewise, you can't take the rights of freedom of speech of 180 million people who want to express themselves. So I think the courts will rule against this. They did twice in the last 4 years in federal court, and they just recently overturned the Montana ban. So I think there's a very good chance this is unconstitutional, but that doesn't seem to be deterring any of my colleagues in the House.
Now, here's the thing, right? There's so many things here. First of all, he said whatever else they do on TikTok, which shows that he doesn't actually know about TikTok. So now, is this just a left and right thing? Is this just I'm trying to be a contrarian type of thing that's going on here? And I just don't like that it's Biden, because I don't like that. I don't hate everything Biden does. And I'll be honest, I don't know everything that he does, but the things that I can see, the things that are glaring, that I feel are eroding society, I very much dislike, and a lot of them stem from his administration. So I don't want to just have this whole thing of well, this is what they want and I just want the opposite. So again, he just doesn't know what's going on TikTok. I would think that if you're going to talk about this ban, you should at least be a little experienced on TikTok. Have somebody start an account, maybe one of your assistants, just scroll through it a little bit, just see what's going on, So they take the data. They all take data. I hate this cop-out. It's such a cop-out. Well, the other companies do it, so just everybody do it. It's fine, whatever. It's already happening. So let's just go down the slope. Let's not slow the slope down that we're going down. Have at it. Everybody should have at it. Well, why shouldn't they get it too? Well, I mean, you can say that's true, but also it's a foreign entity. We're going to go on to another. I'm going to show you a little clip of how China actually works, how business works there. And then he's going on again. I hate that cop out. I don't want to get overexcited about this, but just when you cop out like that and say, everybody has it already. I was having a conversation with a friend and we were talking about how certain things going on in girls' locker rooms, how certain people can get in there if they just identify, and how people looting and stealing. I was saying it's a part of the same system. So if you stand up to one, you should probably stand up to both, because both are eroding society and both are coming from or benefiting from the same system. And my friend was like, no, I'll stand up to the person trying to enter the locker room, but I won't stand up to the thief. The thief can steal all he wants. And I was just like, you want the looting and the stealing and the chaos that happens in the streets? Like one thing is okay and one's not. I don't know. It's just, I just have such an issue with that when people just say these guys already do it, so these guys should be able to do it too. It's like, how about nobody gets to do it? How about we look at this TikTok as an example and all their spyware and we say, do you have anything like that? Hey, all you other companies, do you have anything like TikTok does? If you do, there has to be a restructuring all around. Maybe we don't need to buy all the companies. Maybe all the companies don't need to become U.S. companies or they need to all break up and be bought up by BlackRock. Maybe that doesn't need to happen. Maybe they just all need to conduct themselves better when it comes to the citizens and their data. Maybe that's the thing, Maybe they can see how long we stay on a thing, but they shouldn't know what we're typing when we're outside of the app. Maybe, you know what I mean? I don't know. That's just a little pet peeve of mine. Now, this is the CEO of TikTok talking to Congress because they think that he is Chinese owned and controlled. His company, ByteDance. Well, his company, ByteDance, owns TikTok. He is the CEO of TikTok. Let's get into this.
Let me start by addressing a few misconceptions about ByteDance, of which we are a subsidiary. ByteDance is not owned or controlled by the Chinese government. It's a private company. 60% of the company is owned by global institutional investors. 20% is owned by the founder, and 20% owned by employees around the world. ByteDance has 5 board members. 3 of them are American. Now, TikTok itself is not available in mainland China. We're headquartered in Los Angeles and in Singapore, and we have 7,000 employees in the US today. Still, we have heard important concerns about the potential for unwanted foreign access to US data and potential manipulation of the TikTok US ecosystem. Our approach has never been to dismiss or trivialize any of these concerns. We have addressed them with real action. Now that's...
So, he's basically saying he's not owned by China, right? But the thing about it is, ByteDance is based in China. Now, you think that's just a word. It's just based there. Well, if you're based in China, you have to do as the Chinese government says. That's a real thing. Now, just reading this really quick, right? Does the Chinese government own or control ByteDance or TikTok? Chu, the gentleman we just saw, he told Congress that ByteDance is not owned or controlled by Chinese government. However, right here, like most Chinese companies, ByteDance is legally compelled to establish an in-house Communist Party committee composed of employees who are party members. Now, that right there is enough for me to say, well, you kind of are controlled by China. You can't really say that you're not. You're based there. You have to abide by their laws. And one of their laws when it comes to private business is that you have to do what they ask you to do. And that goes for data as well. It stops nowhere. You have to do what they say, whether it's taxes, whether it's money, whether it's data, whether it's how your employees, you have to do what they say. So to say that it's not controlled by them is just not true. So I don't understand where Senator Paul is coming from, where he just says that this is just not true. Here's the thing. They're compelled by law to do it. Yes. They are doing it. Yes, which means that they are sitting down with communist China. They are sitting down having this in-house committee. This is a real thing. So can we say that they are completely controlled by China? I guess no. But also you could say they are. They have to sit. At the very least, the Chinese government has their ear and can shut them down if they say no to certain requests. And one of those requests could be information, data. Why wouldn't the Chinese Communist Party want access to this? And why wouldn't they be able to get it if you were a company based in China? So I just think what he's saying is just completely untrue, and I don't know why he's saying it. Maybe it's libertarian views. Maybe it's just screw the government at every turn. I don't know. I have no idea. But that's just my conclusion of just the little bit of research I did. And it is true, the percentage breakdown that they're talking about, it's very true. But also, it's also true that they're based in China and are legally compelled to sit down with the Chinese government. And the Chinese government has an in-house committee for their company. What happens in that committee? They just say, oh, good numbers. Good job. Good job. That's what they say? Super fun time. Fantastic. And then they all walk out? Or do they say, how much data are you getting? Where is this data? Can we see it? We want to see it. You're a company that's in our country. We want to see the data you're collecting. I don't know. Let's play another clip. This is more of Tucker and Senator Paul talking. Let's go.
They're saying that TikTok is foreign controlled. I'm willing to believe that. And that they're spying on us. I definitely believe that. But Google and Facebook are spying on us on a much greater scale. And they're foreign controlled too. They're run by people who hate the United States. Demonstrably, they say so. So Google and Facebook are not a threat, but TikTok is. So if you're making that case, like, I know you're lying immediately.
Right. And the thing is that the bill is written such that if 20% of ownership is foreign, that's about what TikTok is, or if you're controlled by a foreign entity. But that's someone's opinion. They're just saying it's controlled by a foreign entity. I think it's probably controlled by profit. Like most things in the marketplace, they want to make a profit. They've spent about $1 billion trying to comply through this organization called CFIUS, which has to do with companies that have some foreign ownership trying to comply and have an American board, have the data kept over here. They've done nothing but try to comply, and the hysteria goes on and on and on. But the First Amendment's more important than anything they're talking about, and so is the Fifth Amendment. But there are many people, including some of your former colleagues at Fox, who believe that there's an exception to the Constitution, that it doesn't apply when there's national security. The problem with that is there's always a national security for any excuse for anything you want to do. And so I don't think you throw out the Constitution when there's allegations of some kind of connection. You have to prove that before you take someone's stuff and before you take someone's First Amendment privileges.
Well, and of course it's not. So we know it's not what they say it's about, obviously. And I know there's a furious lobbying campaign by various investors hoping to scoop up TikTok cheap and from competing companies that want to crush a competitor. I get all of that. And some people are really bought and paid for in Washington. I don't want to blow your mind, but that's true. But there's also an ideological battle here. And a lot of the people voting to ban TikTok object to the messages on TikTok. Like, that's true.
Yeah, it's content. Once you start objecting to content, what you're objecting to is speech. And I object to a lot of it. I don't use it. I've never been on TikTok. I read about what's on TikTok, but I don't use TikTok. But the thing is everybody wants the government to be the parent. They're like, oh, my teenagers, they've got phones and they're on all this stuff. I just can't deal with it. Will you help me by taking stuff off of there? But once you start doing that, there's a whole host of things that can be taken off of there. What about, people who say that you should have religious liberty or that we shouldn't teach transgenderism in the elementary schools? Those are, heretical views as well. Should those be taken down? So I think it's the opposite with TikTok. I think they're promoting a lot of left-wing things. But then there's also people on TikTok that my wife's always telling about, the liberals of TikTok, these people that are exposing the liberals on TikTok. And apparently they're pretty good investigative. I think it's a woman that does this, and she's pretty damn good at finding things out and exposing things. But the bottom line is the more information, the better. If you don't like it, don't use it. That's what happens in a free country. But it happens in an authoritarian country when you're connected to government. If you don't like something and you shut it down.
This is very, very interesting because he's right. You know, you can't just skirt the Constitution whenever you want. But does the Constitution apply to China? Right? And I guess with his line of thinking, he's saying there's no real proof that there's a connection. I feel, just from the little bit that I did, that shows enough proof that you probably, and I can't say shut it down, but you should probably be examining how this app works. Why are they allowed to know your keystrokes after you turn the app off? Why are they allowed to have access to your router, and from accessing your router, access every other device that's connected to the router through Wi-Fi? Why is that allowed? Maybe they should, not a coder here. You should delete that if possible. I don't know. I don't know how it works. But maybe that shouldn't be a thing that they can do. And again, does this constitutional right apply to a Chinese-based company? Because again, there is proof. That is a real thing. Now, to say, are they controlled and are they taking marching orders? They are a Chinese company. You can say the CEO says, oh, there's board members that are American and it's a global company and this and that. Does the Constitution still apply to them? And another thing, again, back to that cop-out that pisses me off so much. The only time they're talking about this spyware that's on TikTok is in the same breath of, well, Google and Meta, look what they're doing. Look what they're doing. So it's just like, it's whatever. It's fine. I think it's such a cop-out. And I don't understand why they're taking it there. And then also something that Tucker said, he said that Google and Meta are foreign controlled. That is not true. That is not true. Google was founded in America. It was founded by Americans. It was founded in California, I believe, which, I mean, nobody's perfect, right? And then, same thing with Meta. Well, Facebook, and then it grew into Meta. But they are not foreign controlled. So it's not even close to the same thing. ByteDance, that owns TikTok, is based in China. Google is based in America. It's completely different. Meta is based in America. Completely different. That's just what I'm saying. Again, love Tucker Carlson, but gotta call it the way I see it sometimes. This is a video about how things work for people who have businesses in China. Okay?
China is ruled from Beijing, but it was here, gathering at this very spot in Shanghai, that the communists began their push for power. 100 years on, with around 90 million members, some are still as fervent in their following. This man checks a special app on the ideas of China's current leader every morning.
The first thing I do when I wake up is to answer the test questions. Of course, it's meaningful, so your mindset won't be loosened.
But China's communists have, well, how can you put it, evolved. Well, most have.
Xi Jinping has been China's chief communist for almost a decade. But the precise role of private enterprise and private money here is still uncertain. Take a look at Shanghai's skyline. It's littered with numerous examples of tall, strong, private companies. But the government-controlled firms with their party links, they're usually nearby.
The government and the Communist Party control key areas of industry here. But private firms are the vast bulk of enterprise now. They create most new jobs. Here's how the relationship works, according to one businessman.
I feel the environment is very important because our party and the country give us the feeling that it is very safe. So we must be inseparable from the harmony of the society in the process of starting a business, right?
In short, the Communist Party wants business folk to get on with investing, innovating and expanding. In return, the companies, though, mustn't rock the boat. They mustn't challenge party control. We tried to get more people to sit down with me and talk to us about doing business in China. A factory owner, a very senior and well-connected academic, but none would talk on camera or on the record. The reason some are wary, well, they fear they may put a foot wrong and upset this man.
We encourage private enterprises to develop.
China's leader Xi Jinping knows that private business is key to economic growth and keeping his Communist Party in control. Hence this endorsement earlier this year.
The party and the state will offer support and provide guidance when private enterprises have difficulties. Therefore, private enterprises should strive to thrive bravely.
Thrive, yes, but with the party there to supervise. Almost half of private firms now have a party committee. As China's communists mark their centenary, the recent struggles of this man tells you a lot about doing business in China.
Robin, BBC News.
When I spoke to Jack Ma a few years back, he was approaching the height of his power. The co-founder and boss of Alibaba, the world's biggest retailer. China's most famous business person, a card-carrying party member. But late last year, a crackdown came from on high. Alipay, part of the bank-busting credit giant he founded, was about to go public. The government stopped it. Since then, Ma has barely been seen in public. His company had become too big, too powerful, a systemic threat, the government said. In today's China, Xi Jinping wants private business to thrive, but only if it will help the party thrive a little bit more.
So, very interesting. Very, very interesting the way things work, especially when they brought up guidance. The party will provide guidance when there are difficulties. And what will they determine difficulties being? Well, you have access to 150 million families, households in America. You've been presented with a difficulty. We will help you with guidance here. Give it all to us. Obviously, I'm joking, but what do they mean by guidance? And all of these companies have to accept this guidance. Alipay got shut down because it was too big and they weren't taking the guidance seriously. ByteDance is not getting shut down. Why? Because they're compelled by law to have this in-house committee of party members, and they are doing so. What does that mean? It means that they have to do what they're told. So for this whole thing, like, I don't know where like Tucker's coming with this whole, they're not really Chinese and Google's doing it too. It's fine. I don't know where all that's coming from. But this to me is clearly a Chinese company. Now, there is another theory that you may start hearing about, and that's the theory that this is not about China at all. This gentleman here breaks down how this has nothing to do with China. But I will put this caveat, I will put this disclaimer, that this gentleman has a deep financial attachment to TikTok. He just blew up on TikTok. It takes a long time to blow up on any social media platform, and he's done an incredible job at that. But to have this threatened now is terrible for him. I will just put that out there. All right, let's get into it.
Everyone on TikTok knows that the TikTok ban has nothing to do with China. It's all about Israel. Been talking to a lot of people involved with the bill on Twitter Spaces, and there's one thing they all have in common. They're not on TikTok. And if they were, they would know that it's not China hashtags that are getting censored. It's Israel hashtags. And I accidentally proved this yesterday when I posted this video about how AIPAC is sponsoring the TikTok ban bill, and I hashtagged it with Free Palestine. See, right there, Free Palestine, and it immediately got throttled, and I could tell it was gonna get no views. So I reposted it with no hashtag, and about 12 hours later, no hashtags equals almost 500,000 views, and Free Palestine hashtags, 23,000 views. And despite the overt censorship of pro-Palestinian content on TikTok, Palestinian support hashtags are the most viewed of all hashtags, and Israel support hashtags are non-existent, because we all see what's going on. Because there's two claims the lawmakers are making. They're claiming that China can suppress anti-China content through suppressing hashtags, for example, and they're claiming they can spy on you and get your data. Problem is, I recently made an anti-China video using all the anti-China hashtags. Tiananmen Square, Uyghur Muslims, I talked all about it. I showed footage of Tiananmen Square. We're at almost 600,000 views. No suppression. Then my homie James Lee, who's a gangster, who you should follow, he charted out how much money all the Congress people are taking from AIPAC, from Israel lobby money, and it's so much money. And then he plotted it out on a graph to show that the people that are receiving more money, see x-axis is more Israel money, means you're more likely to have voted yes on the bill. And the people that voted no, they all took far less money from Israel lobbies. Oh, and real quick, the claim about them harvesting your data, like, you clearly don't understand the nature of cyber warfare today, and you should read this book, do a little research. China's in all of our shit anyways. They can have all of our data whether you outlaw an app or not. And like, who the fuck cares? Like, what are they going to do? Force me to buy a knockoff product on Amazon? Like, China's not going to target U.S. citizens with our data. Like, you're going to send me anti-government propaganda to subvert our American democracy? Like, no need. I'll make that content myself.
Okay. That's where he lost me. He lost me right there. So you want to bring down democracy. Okay. Again, this guy's great. He makes great videos. He does great breakdowns, but he kind of lost me there. But he's bringing up how this is more about, pro-Palestine content, and they want to squash that content. They don't want that to be seen, and it has nothing to do with China. I don't believe that. Because again, we're talking about the left, right? If we're talking about who's in control, it's the left right now. They have no problem with pro-Palestine content. It's very hard to wrap my head around that this has nothing to do with China, knowing everything that I know about this Chinese content. It's just very, very difficult. So let's go. I have another little blurb that this guy says, but let's just do this first. I have a video scheduled at 6 o'clock. Okay. Just give you guys the inside scoop, and I can't have it come out at 6 because I'm going to be doing this video with you guys. So I guess got to make sure that doesn't happen. All right, back to the video. Now, I just don't know about what he's saying. It just doesn't seem logical to me that this is the reason. This is the only reason. Right? So here, I wrote down some notes because I was listening to this guy's whole video, because this video is actually 5 minutes, just so you guys know. There's more to this, and you could look him up. He is at Cancel This. Check him out. His actual name is Ian Carell, I believe. So you can search that as well. Thinking that you shouldn't care about China taking your data is flawed thinking. I chalk this up to him blowing up on TikTok. There's incentive there for him to think about this not being about China at all, and how this is, pretty much, in his opinion, this is all bullshit. It's the kind of content that China wouldn't be, anti-China content wouldn't be what they're suppressing. China wouldn't really care about that because no one in China sees it anyway. They have their own version of TikTok where they control exactly what's seen. So why would they care about an American posting all of this anti-China stuff? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. Other platforms, on the other hand, other platforms may not have their own versions. China doesn't have their own versions of these streaming platforms. So maybe they care in that respect, but in terms of TikTok, I just don't see it. Here, let's play another clip of this guy talking about this whole Israel theory again. Here, let me just pull this up.
The problem is when you have a country where freedom of speech is literally the First Amendment of your Constitution, your own citizens are allowed to make anti-government content when you suck ass at your job. And Israel really does not like when we do our freedom of speech thing. And so they have paid everyone off and have come up with a scapegoat for national security to try to take TikTok away before the election. But trust me, everyone sees what's going on, and it's only going to increase the sentiment. It's only going to take more votes away from your guy, Joe, and it's only going to strengthen Palestinian resistance. That's the thing about resistance. The more you oppress, the stronger resistance gets.
Very true. Very true. I just don't see how it's going to impact Joe. I guess people on the left who are pro-Palestine are anti-Joe Biden giving any aid to Israel whatsoever. But also, wouldn't those people know that he's also giving aid to Gaza at the same time? He's giving to both, really. He's given almost $1 billion to Gaza. But on the other hand, I think they approved it, gave like $14 billion to Israel. So I don't know. I can't get behind the idea that this has nothing to do with China. I just can't get behind that idea at all. And here's the thing. Here's what this really threw me off about this guy, is what he says right here.
And the gloves are off. Y'all are coming for our free speech. Y'all are coming for our platforms where we talk and we share information. Like, TikTok is not an app for videos of dancing kids. TikTok is an app for journalism. Most of TikTok is talking head videos like this of people sharing information, and that is why it is dangerous to them. If you're not on TikTok, I guarantee you have no idea what you're talking about, because it is not what you've been told and it is not what you think it is. The reason why they want to ban TikTok is because things like this spread really fast.
Now, that's true, but what's not true is that TikTok is mostly journalism. I love what this guy does. He's great at it, but it is not mostly journalism. That is just not a true statement. It has morphed from dancing kids to dancing grown women to people spouting their gender theology, and it's become a lot of information. But to act like it's mostly journalism, no, not even close. I don't back that whatsoever. But again, maybe he's right. Maybe this is about Israel more than it's about China. Maybe. I'm just showing you guys all this so you guys can kind of make the decision, because maybe you didn't even know about this whole theory in regards to it being about something other than China. But honestly, in my mind, this is clearly about China. This is, again, ByteDance is a Chinese-based company that owns TikTok and has to have an in-house committee of Chinese Communist Party members. Enough said. I don't know. I don't know what else you'd need to hear. But again, this guy. But then I also found this clip, right? This is Candace Owens. So what this gentleman also did a video on, it's a very long video, so I couldn't play it all because I don't want to just play all this guy's videos like this. But here's another video where he's talking about all of these people. Ted Mnuchin, I believe his name is. He's getting all of these people, and he's pointing out that they're all Jewish. He's like, oh, all these Zionists are getting together and they want to buy TikTok so they can squash all the pro-Palestine content. And I'm like, like that's what all this is about. All this whole thing, it has nothing to do with the fact that ByteDance is based in China. Nothing to do with the fact that they have some of the most intrusive spyware that we have seen in any social media. I mean, this is like NSA level, what they're doing. Probably more so. It's wild what they have access to. Your keystrokes. My wife has TikTok and they have access to my keystrokes. That's insanity. It has nothing to do with that. And it just has everything to do with Palestine and Israel. I can't wrap my head around that. But then I heard Candace Owens talking about this.
Further to that point of Anna Kasparian, her and I have basically been on the opposite sides of everything throughout our entire career. She has said horrible things about me, but so what? I thought this video was interesting, and I'm going to show you what she said regarding AIPAC.
AIPAC is evil. AIPAC is evil, evil. My fellow Americans, are you okay with that? Are you okay with a lobbying group representing the best interests of a foreign government telling you you need to bust your ass every day, work a job that you likely hate, and have a portion of your earnings taken from you by our federal government and funneled to the Israeli government so they can commit atrocities in the Gaza Strip? Are you okay with that? Because I'm not okay with that. And nothing gets under my skin more, okay, than hearing these pieces of crap say things that make it clear that they feel entitled to our money. Entitled. That gets under my skin more than you guys understand, okay?
That's an impassioned response, and what she's referring to there are some leaked documents from an AIPAC meeting. AIPAC, of course, alongside Big Pharma, is one of the biggest lobbying organizations in the United States. They lobby our congressmen, and I'm certain that that includes journalists, because if you have a budget like AIPAC, why wouldn't you be lobbying journalists as well to essentially always fight to have pro-Israel narratives?
Now, this goes along with what Ian's talking about, right? But that woman, Anna, so you guys know about the Young Turks, I'm sure a lot of you don't listen to them. Maybe you do. Jimmy Dore used to be a part of them. He had some choice words for them in my interview with him. I'm just going to play this as well. Here's a little bonus clip for you guys, because she's saying that about AIPAC. This woman, Anna Kasperia, whatever her name is, she's saying that. But then Jimmy Dore also found this clip of her. Here you go. I just want you guys to see this clip as well, just so you get a well-rounded view of how this woman thinks.
Latin American countries. There was a time in America where the State Department the Pentagon would orchestrate and carry out coups in, Latin American countries, for instance, or in Iran. Like, there was a time when the government engaged in all sorts of unsavory schemes across the globe. That's definitely true, okay? That's not the government we have today. How does anyone look at honestly, I don't think the current federal government is even competent enough to carry out a coup. I mean, they tried multiple times in Venezuela and failed. And the way, some of the MAGA Republicans, quite honestly, talk about the federal government makes me think, oh my God, they're asleep at the wheel. They don't understand just how incompetent the federal government is. They can't get anything straight. They can't get anything straight. And you guys think that they're wiretapping you and they're scheming and they're planning on throwing Tucker Carlson in prison for talking to Vladimir Putin? Really?
Yeah.
Come on.
I mean, look, man, I interviewed the CIA agent a long time ago, about nearly 10 years ago. It was a really amazing interview. She told me about honeypot schemes and stuff and how they trick their targets into thinking that they're going to get a sexual relationship. It was an amazing, very candid interview. And she's like, look, this whole thing, and that deep state stuff on the right wing hadn't started yet. But she's like, the number one problem with the CIA is they've become bureaucrats. And
that deep state stuff that's on the right wing. You see what I mean? She thinks this about AIPAC, but then she also thinks that the government can't even accomplish wiretapping anything anymore. I don't know. I just I don't get it. So I just wanted to have you guys see the full spectrum of this lady. So she's really impassioned there. And she's like, oh my God, they're siphoning money and this and that. But then also she's like, and the government doesn't do anything bad. You're asleep at the wheel. You think they're wiretapping people? It's like, what? Just read an article. There's so much proof of that happening all the time. Why wouldn't, what? Are they doing it to random people? Maybe not. But then also it's like you go back to Snowden era and it's like, yeah, also that. I don't know. That's why I'm so just mind boggled on this topic of what's going on with TikTok. Is it that they just want it? They want to buy it up cheap. Zionists are trying to buy it. The Chinese have infiltrated 130 million. I keep saying that number because that's how many users are in America. 130 million households. Which is it? Because it can't be all of them. But I know for sure. See, a lot of what Ian, Cancel This, was talking about, that's a lot of his own speculation. He's putting together some stuff. He connects dots really well, but a lot of that's his speculation. What is for sure is that ByteDance is based in China, is controlled by the Chinese government via an in-house board that they have to have by law. And I say they're controlled because what else is that board going to do? Here's the thing. They have their own version. See, now, if you told me that there was a board that is on the Chinese TikTok version, that Douyin or Douyin, it starts with a D. If you told me they had a board in that company, then I'd be like, oh, okay, so that's completely separate. But no, they have to have a board in TikTok. Remember, Chinese TikTok is not called TikTok. It's called something else. This board is in TikTok. That is the American version. But then also there's Tucker Carlson, and he's saying this. And I think he's pretty accurate with this as well. So let's listen to this.
Quote, voting against the bill is a vote for the Chinese Communist Party, proclaimed neocon Congressman Dan Crenshaw, the Nikki Haley of Texas. Quote, the opponents of this bill aren't defending free speech. They're defending Chinese access to American data and American minds. Not a good look. You're a bad American if you don't agree with me, says Dan Crenshaw. And the rest of the liars said similar things, and maybe some of them believed it. That is possible, given the median IQ in the Congress. But just for a moment, let's consider their argument rationally. Let's just assess it for a moment. The federal government very much wants to protect us and our children from China. That's what they're telling us. Now, let's assume for a moment that that's true. And let's further assume that the Chinese government is, in fact, a greater threat to our happiness and well-being than our own government is. That's a stretch if you think about it. In fact, it's totally unsupported by evidence of any kind. But for the sake of argument, let's just stipulate that that is, in fact, true. So if you were in charge, how would you go about protecting the United States from China? Let's see. The first thing you would do is prevent the CCP from buying American farmland and controlling our food supply. That way, the Chinese government, a government they claim is our greatest enemy, would not have the power to starve our population to death. That would be key. You get right on that. Of course, you'd also want to make sure that the CCP had zero control over our water or energy or communications infrastructure, basic elemental things, things you couldn't live without. You wouldn't want the Chinese anywhere near those things. You would not allow it. Those would be the first priorities on your list. And then you would make certain that the Chinese didn't control your economy. You would not, for example, export your entire industrial base to China, simultaneously making them rich and you poor. You would not do that. Nor would you allow them to hold a meaningful portion of your debt. That would be reckless as hell. You wouldn't allow the Communist Party of China to send billions to your most prestigious universities, thereby gaining control of the minds of the next generation of your leaders. And needless to say, you would not allow Chinese citizens by the tens of thousands to invade your country over your southern border. That would be insane. You would furthermore keep Chinese citizens out of medical, scientific, and R&D facilities. You definitely would not fund their biolabs or cover up for them when they unleashed killer viruses on the world. No, you wouldn't. Why would you do that? And then on questions of foreign policy, you would not spend a ton of time worrying about Taiwan. It's far away, and honestly, who cares? No. Because you don't have all the money in the world or all the time in the world, you would narrow down your priorities, and you would spend your energy and military might on your own hemisphere, where you and your population actually live. The people you want to protect, they live in the Western Hemisphere. So you would not allow the Chinese government to colonize pretty much every country in the Americas, including Canada and Mexico. No. And you certainly wouldn't let the Chinese, of all people, build the infrastructure in places that you directly control, like the supposedly American Virgin Islands, where the roads are paid for by China. That would be crazy and humiliating and very easy to stop. You wouldn't have to put up with that, so you wouldn't put up with it, not for a second. And just to make sure that China understood you're doing all you could to protect your own people, because that was really your goal, because being Dan Crenshaw, you really care about your own people and your own country. Because of that, you would immediately shoot down any spy balloon from China that floated over Montana. Obviously, that's some of what you would do. And yet, somehow, the U.S. government, even Dan Crenshaw, who really cares about your children, protecting them from China, has done none of that.
See, now that's an interesting take as well, right? If the whole TikTok thing is just about China and the infiltration that they could possibly have with all the data and all the spyware through TikTok, then why not take care of all the other things as well? Now, you could argue that when it comes to farmland, it has to be handled on a state level. That's why the governor of Nebraska made sure to handle that, and she actually forced China out in regards to farmland and the positioning near military base, not bases, but certain satellites and whatnot. So it does have to be handled on a state level. You could make that argument, but I'm sure there's something that could be done on a federal level. I'm not sure. Now, controlling the water, that's not true. That's just not a true thing. They don't control the water system. That's not a hard thing to figure out. That's not a hard thing to look into. Now, the food supply, when it comes to the farmland, that's a different issue. How much farmland do they own? Well, they don't own more than Bill Gates. And that's not a good statement. That's not a good statement, but it is true. So they don't own that much. If China took all the farmland that they owned and lit it on fire, it would affect the U.S. food supply none. So That's a little bit of an overstatement there. But he is right about, you know, the border and everything of that nature. But the border, it's its own type of shit show, right? So, but he is right. Why wouldn't you handle all the other things? Why is this the most important thing? You know? It's almost like when you heard about the Restrict Act, you're like, oh, it was called the TikTok bill. That's what it was positioned on the mainstream news. And then when you looked into it, it didn't have much to do with it. Is this kind of the same thing? What ends up happening? And then there's the aspect of, will this be the last platform that they try to force to sell? Because it would make sense that the next one they come after is X. Right? They turn to Elon and they say, you have to sell as well. I don't know, but Elon's an American citizen. And his company is based in California. Again, I can't stress enough how different it is. And again, you can look into what Google's doing, what Meta's doing, and all these other companies, but it's so different. They're founded by Americans in America. TikTok is founded by, I think the guy's Singaporean. I think he's either Chinese or Singaporean. And it's founded and based in China. This is completely different. So Senator Paul saying, hey, you know, what about the Constitution? I don't think it's supposed to apply to people who are based in China. I don't think so. The guy doesn't even live in America. I don't know. It's an interesting little case, but I'll let you guys decide for yourselves. I just wanted to bring you the Joe Rogan, what they talked about, the theory that Tucker has going on, that this is not even Chinese, and then the theory that Ian has that, you know, it has nothing to do with China whatsoever. They're kind of on the same page. And then my theory that this actually does have to do with China, very much. This is a Chinese company. They have access to far too much information. And I never will buy the cop-out of, well, other companies have a lot of information, so why can't they? I think that's an absolute bullshit argument. 100%. How about we look at that one? I've said this before. We look at that one company that has way too much access to the citizens, and we look at the other platforms and say, hey, do you have this much access? How about all of you have to change how much access you have? How about that? How about we get this in check? How about the citizens who are in their homes actually have privacy? How about that? How about we just spread that across the board to all you guys? Instead of one has so much invasive stuff, the other should get invasive stuff. I don't know. But you guys decide based on the information and look into it some more. There's a whole bunch to look into. Anyways, subscribe, like, share. It helps tremendously. I'm out.